Hey, everybody. It's Ray Peters, your host for the Wednesday night on Texas football live stream. And we're joined by the all star cast. Look at this lineup we got tonight. We got Rod Babers down on the bottom right over there, lifetime Longhorn, CJ Vogel, recruiting guru, and expert on all things Longhorns as well. There goes Rod for the quick pop. There's CJ. And on the top, we got the guru of all time for these type of enterprises, the websites. Somebody's going crazy with the stuff behind the scenes there, Bobby. Bobby Burton. The reason why we got the man here tonight is because there's some significant news in college football. It's not often the man who just won the national championship jumped ship, but old Jim Harbaugh up at Michigan, the rumors seem like they've finally come true. He's headed to the Los Angeles Chargers to take over that NFL franchise. Of course, his brothers had considerable success in the NFL. John with the Baltimore Ravens, in fact, beat Jim in the Super Bowl about a decade ago, San Francisco losing to the Baltimore Ravens. But we see there Adam Schefter reporting earlier this afternoon, about an hour and a half ago, that Jim was headed over to take over the Chargers franchise. Bobby, we're, of course, a Texas football-centric channel. But, you know, the way college football is going these days, there are repercussions, dominoes falling everywhere. We're always interested on how something like this could affect the Texas Longhorns. Just give us your initial impressions on Harbaugh leaving, doing such a great job there this past season, despite some controversies, of course. Any things you can tell us about how this might affect the Longhorns down the road? And plus, as I said, your initial impressions on Harbaugh departing college.
Well, I think he wanted to go. I mean, he had too much turmoil at Michigan. He got in. I mean, you don't get in trouble with the NCAA at Michigan. That's like they don't run afoul of the rules very often. You know what I mean? And so the fact that he did it there, he just not cut out for college. I think everybody probably agrees with that in retrospect. The other thing that I would say, as it relates to Texas in particular, is, as we all know, this puts a 30-day open marker on everybody in the Michigan program, essentially. Now, does that mean that they're going to get a ton of guys from Michigan, or that a ton of guys will go into the portal? Of course not. They hire Sharon Moore, their offensive coordinator. I think they're looking at very little attrition, if any. But if they do start this process, it's a different story. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that, look, Texas could be sitting here in a situation where there's 3 or 4 guys on that roster that they would love to have, starting with anybody up front. Kenneth Grant, a 330-pound nose tackle. Mason Graham, probably going to be a first-team All-American this year. Both that they have the top. They may have the top 2 interior defensive linemen in the Big Ten next year, just to give you a sense. So remember when we talked about Texas needs one good one and one great one? Well, those 2 at Michigan qualify for that latter category. And then you have a guy like Will Johnson, who, frankly, I mean, I know Texas is not really going all in on Jabbar Muhammad, but Will Johnson's a different category. I mean, he's a shutdown corner. Jabbar Muhammad's a good player. Will Johnson may be a top 10 pick at corner. He's worth a different category than the other guys in the portal. And so I look at it as a tremendous opportunity, not only for Texas. Texas won't be the only one sniffing around, but Texas does have some time here. They have a week before the ad drop window closes. Some schools don't have that. I just read an article that Ohio State, for instance, their ad drop ended on January 19th. Not that anybody's going to go from Ohio State or from Michigan to Ohio State, but the point being, there are schools where that ad drop window is already closed. Texas, not one of them. We'll see what it means. Longhorns, very interested right now. Very, very interested, and will be. But, you know, like everything, you have to wait for the dominoes to drop.
CJ, let's get your perspective on what's happening with Michigan right now.
Well, it's certainly a big name, you know, for Texas specifically. You look at the college football carousel and, you know, the playoffs from this past year. Only Steve Sarkisian is the only returning coach to the university in which he brought his team to the college football playoffs. So it's another coach that is no longer on the recruiting board in which you can point to and say has won a national championship. You know, there's only a handful of those guys still in college football today. Nick Saban obviously retired earlier this year. Jim Harbaugh to the NFL. That list is shrinking by the minute. Those coaches are also becoming very thin, in which you can point to and say have been to a college football playoff. And now Steve Sarkisian can use that to his advantage on the recruiting trail as well. From a Texas perspective, it's obviously big that Texas plays Michigan week 2. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but not having Jim Harbaugh return to Michigan, as well as J.J. McCarthy, you know, Blake Corum, they have a whole slew of offensive linemen that are departing as well to the NFL. Michigan, from what they did this past season by winning the national championship going into 2024, is going to be almost a moot point, because there's going to be a completely different team than what they did a year ago, more so than what you would see on a normal year-to-year turnover basis. So it's big time for Texas, obviously, because they get to play them week 2, and it's in Ann Arbor there. So a lot going on. I'm eager to see kind of what shakes down, who departs, what happens as well. So it's a big domino, no doubt about it.
Yeah. A lot of churn up there. Rod, your perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, Sark has championed continuity for a while on the 40 acres, you know, trying to keep the same culture, the same coaches, the same message, wants to remain as consistent as possible. And that actually now is going to pay huge dividends. It's already paid huge dividends, but now you see so much turnover happening among the blue bloods. That's why this is rare. Right? Last time a national championship winning head coach decided to step away from the team that he won the title with was Tom Osborne in Nebraska, and he was retiring. You just don't see this. We're just a new age of college football where you see this much turnover at blue blood institutions, places that were supposed to be destination jobs. And now the transfer portal with that 30-day window, I mean, that's just a game changer in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I think for Texas, getting back to the continuity, though, I think it's helping. Returning your head coach, basically your play caller, your OC, your DC, hell, your special teams coordinator too, and the starting quarterback in his 3rd year. I just can't think of many other schools. I mean, Georgia's actually one of those schools too. There's not many schools around the country that can say they return that type of continuity with the roster that Texas is returning. You know, that's why the expectations will be through the roof. And now one of their opponents in the preseason, Michigan, is also going through an upheaval of sorts with their roster, with the coaching staff. You know, for Texas, I think Georgia is the only one that really kind of returns the same amount of continuity on their schedule that Texas does.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby, I'm seeing the name Mike Elston a lot in the chat. Can you let everybody on the program know who Mike Elston is?
Yeah, Mike Elston's the defensive line coach for the University of Michigan. Now, he's a Michigan grad. He coached he really was kind of reared under Brian Kelly. Coached, I believe, at Central Michigan with Brian Kelly, then went to Cincinnati, then went to Notre Dame. And then he did not follow Brian Kelly to LSU. Instead, he decided to stay in the Midwest, stayed at Notre Dame, and then went to Jim Harbaugh's staff 2 years ago. So I feel like there's not much of a tie there with Steve Sarkisian. If there is a tie, it's the fact that Terry Joseph coached with him at Notre Dame. But Elston has gotten a lot of accolades for not only his coaching, obviously, but also his recruiting. And so that's why people are asking about him. I think right now Texas is in a situation where they're trying to decide what's going to be happening with the defensive line coach themselves. And so people are obviously saying, well, he should be a possible addition. Well, Elston also might be a defensive line coach in the NFL. He might also stay on at Michigan, et cetera. They're going to figure that out. Mark Schnell saying the Michigan DL coach going to the NFL reportedly. So look, we don't know what's going to happen here, but we'll see what happens. I feel like Texas right now needs to sit tight and see who goes and who plays or who goes into the portal. It's not so much if you're going to poach somebody from Michigan staff. It's about the players you can poach from Michigan.
Sure. As we see some other comments there. We also have the super chat that's available to you. It's a way for you to get into the program and participate. We'll put your question right at the top of the list. Our super producer, Matthew Hutchison's always happy to pull out some questions for us as well. Bobby, let me ask you a question about our current defensive line coach opening. In case someone didn't hear your comments earlier this morning, what's the latest word on Rod Wright? Is that not going to happen? What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know that Texas ever really offered him the job. First,
okay.
Rod is currently the assistant to the defensive line coach. Now, the Texans let go of their main defensive line coach, and Rod is expected to be able to interview for that defensive line coach's job, but he's not guaranteed it. And so if he is taking that, thought and not taking the Texas job, it doesn't line up financially. It's just not in the same stratosphere. And so something tells me that he's maybe not been offered that job, and or he's been promised the bigger job with the Texans, and it's not just being reported yet. One of those two things, and I don't know which. So I don't want to lean one way or the other. The reality of it is, though, it doesn't look like he's going to be at Texas. He's going to stay with the Texans in some capacity. And so given that, I think that Texas is on the prowl for a top-notch defensive line coach right now, most likely in the NFL. But you never know with these situations. I think they're gonna look around, and I think he's going to try to get the hire right, just like he's tried to get Chris Jackson right a year ago. He didn't hire anybody immediately when everybody said you had to hire somebody for recruiting purposes. He didn't do that, Rod.
Yeah. Does it seems like the Chris Jackson hire though was more, was more targeted on Chris Jackson. It seemed like he was zeroed in on his guy, and maybe he zeroed in on his guy with D-line coach. But I can't get, I don't know if I have a read on it at all exactly who he wants. I do think you're right about the NFL though. It seems like that more and more Sark wants that NFL credential, right? He wants that NFL credibility on the resume of some of his coaches. I think it helps him recruit. Also, I think when he's trying to build that pipeline to the NFL, those are some guys that can help him build that pipeline. They know how it looks. And I think Sark likes that. More and more the guys he's bringing in seem to have that as a player or as a coach. They seem to have that on their resume.
Hey, who's the young man on our administrative staff now? Brandon Harris, is that the name?
Yes.
We freed him up. So he's now on the recruiting trail, right? Filling if there was a opening there based on Davis going over to LSU. Well, let's not forget, and I mentioned this on our On Texas Football website page, and make sure you guys go to that, and we'll eventually put the URL up so people can know where to go for that. It's a brand new website that we'd love for you to participate in. A lot of you already have. How about that? Join the conversation on TexasFootball.com. I mentioned the other day, let's not forget, Johnny Nansen is a veteran defensive line coach. So he's a guy that can, help stay the course and get some, instruction. There's not much real coaching going on right now. I guess it's Torrey Beckton doing most of the work with the young guys there. We're going to get fully into that, and we'll talk about those things a little bit later in the show. Other big news today, Ryan Williams, who was a former commitment to the University of Alabama, flirted with us a bit. Some other folks, perhaps Auburn, where his father played football. Ryan's recommitted to Alabama. CJ, what can you tell us about that very talented receiver?
Yeah, obviously had been previously committed to Alabama under the Nick Saban era for the Tide, reopened his commitment after Nick Saban retired, obviously, and that's when things really started getting rolling, and you started wondering just where is the five-star going to end up. It looked like Auburn, Alabama, and Texas were going to be that final three. Texas A&M snuck a quick visit in there as well, but there was a lot of pull from the in-state Alabama recruiting side of things there to keep him in the state of Alabama. Obviously, he's a reclassified wide receiver who's now in the top 10 rankings of just about every service in the country. So a lot of pressure to keep him in state. This isn't a guy that you necessarily want to see walk out of your state boundaries. And credit to Kalen DeBoer, stepping in immediately, getting to Ryan Williams immediately, and still continuing to say, hey, this is going to be the spot for you. Look at the wide receivers we were just able to put into the NFL as a result of being at Washington. Texas did not ever get him to campus, and ultimately I think that was kind of the biggest deterrent for them in terms of what actual chance they had to pull Ryan Williams out of the state of Alabama. So unfortunate in that regard. He was scheduled for an official visit this weekend, but as the writing on the wall came clear, it was clear that Texas was no longer going to be in consideration once he was able to cancel that Texas official visit late last night. Sorry.
Sure. Hey, Bobby, any more perspective on the kids from Alabama? KJ Lacy, still plenty confident that he's going to stick with his class?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Ryan Williams is separate from KJ Lacy, even though they go to the same high school. Williams reclassified to 24. KJ Lacy, of course, is the 2025 commitment for Texas at quarterback. The important distinction here is that Lacy picked Steve Sarkisian not over Alabama at the outset. Ryan Williams was initially committed to Alabama, not anybody else. And so there's a difference here in that. I do believe that, he's going to have some pressure both at Alabama and Auburn. KJ Lacy will. At the same time, what happened at Washington just now, or what happened at Alabama, isn't any different than what just happened at Texas. By Arch Manning staying an extra year or being forced at using a red shirt and Quinn Ewers coming back, well, guess what just happened at Alabama? Mm-hmm. Jalen Milroe's coming back, and Austin Mack is coming in. Mm-hmm. He was the red shirt at Washington that DeBoer handpicked. Furthermore, they've got another guy that's probably going to be signed as a 2025 commitment for their quarterback class. So Kalen DeBoer is not going without a quarterback, just like Steve Sarkisian not going without a quarterback. So I don't think that makes the Alabama position makes it look any better to KJ Lacy. I think Steve Sarkisian has his guy for the 2025 class if he can keep him. I mean, it's going to be difficult because KJ Lacy is a great player. That's gonna be one.
Hey, Rod, as a former player, let's morph into some of the activities that are going on at this time. I don't know if things have changed in the last 20 years or so since you were at Texas. I'm going to ask you first about what players go through at this point of the year, and then I'm going to have CJ fill us in on some specific scoop or what may be going on with Torrey Beckton and the kids at this point. But Rod, what are guys going through at this point? A lot of conditioning, lifting weights, running. What's happening at this point?
Yeah, I'm sure, every strength and conditioning program is different. Every strength and conditioning coach is going to emphasize something different. And every player has their own individualized workout or their own individualized off-season program, right? Because, the D linemen are going to be different than the DBs, but every player has got their own different strengths and weaknesses and things that the coaches believe they got to work on, right? And so that message is relayed from the coaches. Obviously, from they're watching the film room to the strength and conditioning coaches about, hey, we want this guy to get stronger. We need this guy to put on 5 to 10 pounds. This guy's making a position change, so we need him to lose some weight, whatever it may be, right? That message is communicates to strength and conditioning coaches, to the dietitian, to nutrition. We didn't have that when I played, by the way. No dietitian, nutrition. Mad Dog was also the dietitian and nutritionist. So probably, yeah. So that wasn't good.
He was just nutrition.
He just giving us creatine shakes. That wasn't good. He just take that. That was the diet pretty much. But so now these are a lot more sophisticated, as well it should be. So every player probably has a meal plan that they're on, and based on what the coaches want from them, what they want to see from them. And I think as a player individually, you also got to take a lot of responsibility about your off-season regimen and what you're doing, right? You know what you got to work on. You know what you got to get better at. The coaches are going to, they're going to try to build you into the type of player that they want to see, but you yourself got to have a vision for how you want to play and the type of player that you want to be. So if if you got to work on getting quicker, if you got to work on, hey, maybe it's film study for you. Maybe it is maybe it's straight away speed for you. Maybe it's just, maybe you got to be stronger. Maybe you got bad hands like Rod B had. Maybe you got to hit the jugs all off season, whatever it may be. Every player you're on your own journey. Right. That's why Jay Witt's journey is such a great story, right? Because it took him years to figure it out. And then he figured out, all right, you know what? My body is different than everybody else's body. you gotta really tailor your workouts based on how your body's going to react to your physiology. And once you as a player figure that out, and by year 2 or 3 you should. But yeah, man, you have to also have your own goals for the off season as a player.
Right.
And I used to have goals every off season, things that I wanted to achieve. Whether I wanted to clock a fast 40, we would get timed at the end of the off season. You do all your testing, and maybe I wanted to have a faster 40, or maybe I wanted to get a little bit stronger. Maybe I wanted to add 5 pounds, but I still want to keep my speed. You had little things you have to work on. So every player is a little bit different. Players have to make sure they're being accountable to themselves too. I mean, just the off-season workouts you're doing with the strength and conditioning coaches are great. Coaches can't be a part of that, but this is also when you get the organized team workouts, right? The team is organizing these workouts. So, when I was the leader of the DB room, then I had to gather up all the DBs, get everybody's schedules together, go talk to Sims, hey, get the wideouts schedules together. All right, when are we gonna throw? When we doing these 7-on-7 sessions? We want to get 2 or 3 of them a week. We want to get 3 of them a week. Okay, good. Are we gonna call these Texas State dudes to try to get some work in with them? How are we gonna do that? You actually got to organize it. I mean, you say organize team activities, but no, you need to actually, as players, you would have to go out and organize those player-led workouts. And that, I think it's why it's going to be an important offseason for Quinn, not only for what he's going to do physically, but it's his team. It's his team. He's got new receivers. They need to work on the chemistry, the continuity. That's also a big part of the offseason. Those 7-on-7 sessions, the player-led workouts and team sessions. I used to really look forward to those, and those get really competitive. I mean, we'd get to the point where players wouldn't be speaking for a couple of days because we got after it and got into it. Out there on the practice fields, and me and Roy Williams got into it, and he thought it was a pass interference, and then I might have said something crazy. Then we ain't talked for a couple of days. Like it would get that heated, but it's supposed to. Like, trying to get some real work in, and so it's I think for the guys it's a lot of it's a lot on their plate because of course with all this being said, you still got to go to school. Right, you're still a student on top of that, but I do think, man, this is where the championships are won, right? This is where players actually are getting better, and like I said, it's part on the strength and conditioning staff, partly on the coaches communicating what needs to be worked on, and partly on the player because you need to take it on yourself to go above and beyond as much as you can.
Sure. You mentioned leadership. You were a leader on the defense back in the day. Matthew just put up a photograph of current workouts and showed Quinn Ewers right in the middle. So CJ, tell me about what you're hearing about what's happening with Torrey Becton and the team.
Yeah, Rod, I take it that your Mad Dogs in college were a little bit different than mine. So I had to point that out real quick as we're talking about the off season. But no, I asked Matthew to throw up that photo of Quinn Ewers because that's going to be a big talking point that we're going to hear a lot of. We wanted to see more leadership from Quinn Ewers from year 1 to year 2. I think we saw that. As we've talked about previously this offseason, the transition from year 2 to year 3 needs to be Quinn Ewers taking grasp of this team and saying, this is me. This is my team. Y'all are with me. However far I'm going to take y'all is how far we're going to go. And I really like that. Very on, that's kind of been the emphasis in winter conditioning. It's been Quinn Ewers leading the team breakdowns, leading workouts, as we've seen in the middle there doing the planks. That's going to be the next step for Quinn Ewers. We talked about the on-field where he can improve with the throws, with the pocket awareness as well. Being a leader in which it doesn't feel forced is the next step for Quinn Ewers as well. And being almost in a weird way an elder statesman of this program now, a 3-year starter. It's going to fall on Quinn. There's going to be a lot more responsibilities and impact that he has behind the scenes and in the locker room that starts in the winter workouts. And one more thing, adding as many players as Texas is adding right now to winter conditioning and getting acclimated to the culture of this program is huge. You don't want to be walking around campus right now in the heat when you don't really want to be walking around all too much outside. You got school coming up. Classes are starting for the fall semester. Oh, and you got to focus on, your scheme, your game plan, going to school, the games coming up on Saturday. You don't want to be rushed into that. Texas is now being able to walk in 20-plus new members of this team and really start getting acclimated to what they want to be culturally inside of Moncrief. And, sure enough, as we just saw, it looks like Quinn Ewers is taking that leadership role in a way that we didn't see last year.
I got to say this. Think about it. I mean, we're talking about Quinn Ewers as a third-year starter. It seems like he just got here.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I mean, and he came here via the portal, right? And I go back to remembering exactly how that happened. And I mean, he literally went in a portal on a Friday, and Steve Sarkisian was at his house Friday night.
Yeah.
And here we are 2 years later. He started, Texas played in the college football playoff, and now he's going to be a third-year starter. I mean, that literally, it feels like that happened yesterday, and it was 2 years ago.
That's a good point.
Yep. And now he's the odds-on favorite with Carson Beck to be the Heisman winner next year.
Crazy.
So it's something. Hey, Jeff Carey, I know that, Juan, we have your super chat as well. I'm going to fit that in a little bit later when our conversation drives us back to that. But Jeff Carey is asking about speed. And Rod Babers was one of the fastest members of the Longhorn team when he played back in the day. And Jeff is saying, since we're going after speed, and what football team wouldn't, but who will be the fastest Longhorn? And any college football player ever run under 10 flat? I'm an old guy. I used to run the 100-yard dash, but the 100 meters is a little bit different animal, right? So, there are guys that have broken that for sure. But I'll let Rod, the fastest member of this crew. I'm confident saying that, Bobby. I know you got wheels, man. Roddy D can still take us all. Sorry about that.
I literally am not going to challenge Rod to a foot race. That is not
Rod, Xavier Worthy, I'm superseding the chat. Jaden Blue, I'll throw that name out there, but I'll let you go. What do you think?
I mean, it's and thanks for the super chat, Jeff. We appreciate it. And no, I'm not as fast as I used to be, not at all. But it seems pretty intentional, right? It seems pretty deliberate that Stark is targeting speed, that he wants to be faster. We've been talking about here on Texas football that even though you lost Xavier Worthy, who Real Analytics clocked as the fastest ball carrier in college football last year. You lost Keelan Robinson, one of the fastest players in college football. You may overall be a faster offense next season just because of the additions that Sark's brought in and how explosive those guys are in terms of their twitchiness, their agility, and just some of these guys have straight up, just breakaway track speed. And in terms of the fastest guys on the team next year, Jaden Blue's depth, because Jaden Blue actually was clocked as the fastest running back by Real Analytics. So he's definitely in the conversation. There's no doubt Isaiah Bond is probably one of those guys that might be in that conversation. He's one of those freakish I mean, I haven't seen Ryan Niblett, but I keep hearing people keep talking about him. Every time I talk to one of the players, they talk about him being a freak of nature when it comes to speed. Yeah, man, they got to. I mean, there's a bunch of guys could be in that category. I asked X-Man multiple times last season, who's the fastest guy on the team? Oh, I think I've asked him in multiple ways too. The first time I asked him, I was like, "Hey, if y'all guys lined up in a race, who would win?" He said himself. And then the second time I asked him, I was like, "So name me the guy on the team that's faster than you." And he was like, "There's nobody on the team faster than me." And he said it confidently too. Like he didn't even give. He was like, "No, it's me. I'm the fastest guy." So I'm interested to see what he runs in the 40 at the combine. It'll be interesting. And I'll say this in terms of the second half of the question: has anybody run under a 10 flat 100 yards? I'm assuming. I don't necessarily know about that because it's hard to translate it. The meters.
He means meters. Meters.
But and football players, I mean, all time, you'd probably have to go to. I mean, I don't know what Bullet Bob Hayes ran and all those kind of people, but he might be in that category.
Yeah, he definitely would have been faster.
Yeah, there's some track guys that's some definitely
Ronaldo Nehemiah was probably fast. John Burt, I don't know what he ran, but he was fast.
Yeah, they got a couple of guys.
Jamal Charles crazy pretty fast now. I think Jamal Charles, Tony Jones, a guy named Herky Walls before your time, Rod.
Yeah,
he was on the Texas track team. Johnny Lamb Jones.
I've heard about him.
He won an Olympic gold medal.
Hey, I don't know how fast Jerry Gray was, but I watched him walk down Bo Jackson. He got football speed.
Hey, did they show that film in the DB room back then? I mean, they had
Coach
to show
Keenum
that.
might have been Coach Keenum. You know, Coach Keenum used to always show them old clips, man. He come in there, have a little history lesson about DBU.
Hey,
Yeah.
I had something to mention. I just looked this up. So I think that it's likely Isaiah Bond, but not by much. Not like he ran a 10.48 in high school, and then ran a 10.49. That was as a junior. As a senior in high school, he ran a 10.49. This is the one that knocks my socks off because he's not a big guy. He ran a 21.04 200.
That's moving, man.
I mean, so that means sustained speed, right? Now, what I think Jaden Blue has is that acceleration speed. Like, I don't know that Jaden Blue is going to run a 10.500, but he may run a 6.9 60 or something like that.
Yeah.
Isaiah Bond, by the way, ran a 6.83 60. What's the best time in the NCAAs nowadays? Like 6.5, 6.5, 6.6. That's cooking.
Yeah.
That's cooking.
Man.
So
you're right about that.
He's a fast dude now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but I did see a little bit earlier. Blake Monroe posted, because I was watching this morning on Coffee and Football. Ed Small, the combined baseball recruit, and wants to play football. And he is decommitted from our baseball program, but he was a fast kid. But just wanted to throw that out there. Ed Small.
No, he's a good player. He can play, man. I watched him a few times, and I got a chance to go watch him at 7-on-7 and some of those 7-on-7 like little regional things. I got a chance to watch him there, and I've watched him a couple of times actually, on the field, just go watching some of the young DBs. I'm trying to go watch the young DBs. Man, he's out there cooking them young DBs out there. This dude, he's a baller now. He can play football. Yeah. I know baseball is probably the sport he should play. You got guaranteed money, lifetime health care. You know what I mean? That's probably what the route he should go. And I know his dad, he's from good stock too. His daddy, good people. I mean, his family, they're good people as well. So he's got a good head on his shoulders. The young man is really respectful. I mean, he's humble. He's got all those those intangibles that you want in a next level athlete. So he's gonna play something at the next level. Probably can play both at the next level if he goes to the right school. But I'm telling you, if he's focusing on football, it's not a decision that, in my opinion, is gonna hurt him, because I think he is a really good football player. I don't know if I haven't watched him play baseball, so he might be a better baseball player. But football, if he focuses, man, he's gonna get some attention. Yeah.
Wow.
And I got some more news, some more stuff for you guys.
Go ahead.
The fastest 100 meter by any Longhorn currently there that has been automatically timed is Ryan Niblett, 10.41.
Yep.
Here's one for you. Matthew Golden, who's one of the best kick returners in the country and has that long speed we talk about, 10.93 is his best 100 meter. Silas Bolden, what do y'all think he ran in high school?
Probably 10.58. Probably like a 10.8 or something.
10.61.
10.61.
And that's good.
For a little guy with small strides, right?
That is a
acceleration
room.
Yeah, he's putting together a track team, like I said, and he's doing it on purpose. He's got a plan. I think I have a glimpse of what it is. All I'll say is look at that Miami squad this past season and what they were doing. And Mike McDaniel put together the fastest. Yeah, he put together basically the fastest team in the NFL, a track team. And look at a lot of the concepts that he was using with that speed. That two backs. And I wouldn't doubt one bit if we see Sark stealing a lot from Mike McDaniel and the way to utilize that speed. Both RPO-based passing games. Shanahan coaching tree. He's a Shanahan admirer. They both of those systems, you use some of the zone blocking scheme, the outside zone, wide zone. I'm telling you, and Sark admits he still plays. He's already said I still plays, and I steal him from that Shanahan coaching tree. I'm telling you, he's CJ,
got some. I'm not letting CJ get out of here without mentioning his favorite freshman wide receiver from Missouri. 6'2", 200-something pounds, runs about a 10.6. So I know you love Ryan Wingo, right, CJ?
Yeah, without a doubt. And he's probably the odd one of the bunch that has that elite speed with that height, So when you see these guys lining up for their final winter conditioning race at the end of the semester, which I know that they're going to try and find a way to do, it's going to be a line of short fellas, and then you're going to see Ryan Wingo poking out right there, and he's going to keep up with just about anybody that he runs against.
Yeah, and you know that Coach Sarkisian is going to love seeing that too. All right, Bobby, let's talk about what Juan asked in the super chat. And Juan, thank you very much for doing this. We're going to cycle back around to the coaching concept. We have an opening there in the defensive line. So Juan's a guy who's well connected. He likes to read everything he can on the internet. So he says, Bobby, there are rumors Texas is looking at the UCLA defensive line coach who got promoted to defensive coordinator, and he's worked with Coach PK, Terry Joseph, Coach Banks, Johnny Nansen, and Sarkisian. Any thoughts on that concept?
Ika Malo is his name. He's the defensive line coach at UCLA. He was at Washington, went to UCLA. Look, I think that we're all thinking names instead of knowing names.
Right.
That is what and that's okay. That's all right. My point being that until I actually know a guy's been contacted, like early on, I knew some guys had been talked to at least. Now it's gone to a situation where I don't know who really has been identified and what's really happening and who's just kind of on the periphery, right? And so I'm not going to sit here. I don't know that guy that well. I know of him, just like I don't know Mike Elston personally. I mean, I know people who've worked with him and talked to him about him, but look, I feel like guessing is fun, but I don't know that it's necessarily productive because he literally Sark could still hire a name right now that nobody has ever heard of, and he would be a perfectly good coach. That's what I want to get across, because had anybody even heard of Chris Jackson before I put his name out there the day 2 weeks before he got hired? The answer is no.
No.
Nobody. He was a assistant wide receivers coach with the Chicago Bears, and then went and was the receivers coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nope. Nobody had even known about it. Is he a good coach? Yeah, clearly. Can he recruit? Yes, clearly. You see what I'm saying? And so don't, just because he's not on any list or doesn't come with this pedigree where you got to think, I will agree with Rod. Now, this is one thing that Rod says that struck home for me. A little bit of that, a touch of NFL. What's it like to be at the next level? Because I think he wants his guys to be able to know what it's like at the next level. He wants them to know their coach knows what it looks like and where you need to get. Outside of that, I don't think it has to be totally NFL or totally college, but I like what Rod said, just a tinge of credibility and pedigree there. I agree with that.
Let's get CJ earning his keep here. CJ, tell me a little bit about what's happening with our coaches out on the recruiting trail. Any new offers issued recently? Any names that are popping out for you?
Yeah, Texas was on the recruiting trail. They have been on the recruiting trail for about a week and a half now. You mentioned Brandon Harris earlier. He was out in Louisiana, stopped at some of the big programs down there, Westgate, the current home of Jabari Anton, and the former home of Derek Williams, obviously a big talent hub down there. Catholic High School as well. He offered Blaine Bradford, who was on campus this past week, in the 2026 safety, who is currently receiving a 5th star right now in the early rankings for that classification. And then the Lamar Brown, the number 2 overall prospect from the entire country, Texas offered as well yesterday. So Brandon Harris is doing a lot of work right now in Louisiana. We also talked about Jamal Beal Gaines. He's a 6-foot cornerback out of Desert Edge, Arizona, runs a 10.6. Terry Joseph was out there in Arizona yesterday to stop by and see him. We talk about speed on offense. Well, we're talking about speed on defense here, and he certainly has that with the 10.6 time right there. Texas also stopped by Dallas Skyline today to see Elijah Bo Barnes. That was Steve Sarkisian and Jeff Banks. They also stopped by South Oak Cliff as well. So a lot going on. Tashard Choice also stopped by all the Frisco schools earlier in the week as well. So you can basically name anywhere in the country right now. that has produced big-time recruitments over the past couple of years, and expect to see a Texas coach walking by any given week. So a lot going on, and it's been, we talk about it hasn't been a slow time for any of us since the season has concluded this year, this past week as well. For that Texas coaching staff is no different.
Hey, CJ, Bo Barnes, I know you mentioned earlier today, he's getting a lot of attention. Tell us a little bit about who Bo is, what position he plays, and what is so appealing about him.
He's a big body that can move. And again, kind of continuing that speed conversation. You don't see it all too much at the linebacker position, but he certainly fits that kind of mold right there. He's a tremendous thumper, but he has great instincts in the passing game as well. You talk about what Jalen Ford was able to do for Texas in the passing game. You see a little bit of those instincts as well with Elijah Bo Barnes. This is actually the third time in a week that a Texas coaching staff has been able to meet and greet with Elijah Bo Barnes. Johnny Nansen actually stopped by last week to see him in a workout. He obviously was on campus this past weekend for the junior day, and here he is with Sark on that junior day, and then Sarkisian and Jeff Banks, as I mentioned earlier, were able to stop by this afternoon to see him once again. Texas is putting on a full-on recruiting approach for Elijah Bo Barnes, and he's right there up at the top of the priority list for the Longhorns at the linebacker position.
You mentioned a thumper. Hey, Bobby, Matthew has highlighted in his little selection pool that I pulled from Anish Singh at 732. I know you mentioned this earlier today. I know the answer to this already, but I'll let you follow up on this. Joshua Lair, the human hit stick, as he was called by one of our colleagues a few months ago. He's decommitted from the University of Washington. We were apparently in his final two, or at least he claimed we were when he committed to Washington. What can you tell us about Joshua Lair, the hard-hitting?
Yeah,
safety?
he is. Texas is not going after Josh Lair at this point, is my understanding. Okay. So Xavier Filsaime basically took that spot, and that's one of the reasons, frankly, Texas didn't push for Josh Lair. They were trying to get on some guys that were a little bit speedier. Lair, though, is one of those guys that definitely comes downhill and kind of decapitates you, so to speak. I think that, it's interesting. Texas is in a weird scenario right now, Rod and CJ and Ray, in that they are at the limit of how many new enrollees they can have in a semester. If they've already got 7 new enrollees this semester, only Silas Bolden is not a midtermer for them. So of the 8, they have 7, plus they have 18 newcomers on early enrollees from high school. So they're at the 28 number. I don't know how or what they're going to do if they could get in Jabbar Muhammad, for example, how they even could get him in. But we'll see if that happens. They're running up against all kinds of numbers. But I do think that their overall scholarship number at 86 or 87, whatever it is right now, that's going to be fine by the spring. There's going to be some natural attrition occur on the Texas roster as it is. There'll be a handful of guys go leave through the portal at the end of the spring. But I look at that. They don't have room for Josh Lair for sure, not if they're possibly holding a couple for portal guys. I mean, we know they still want a defensive tackle.
Yep.
They've got to, and they may look at a punter too, guys. I mean, yeah, just keep that in mind.
Good point. We've got about 20, 25 minutes left in the show. Make sure you get your super chats in, and we'll be sure to address those and have your questions answered. And if you just want to make your own comment, then we'll recognize that and say yay, nay, good idea, or keep thinking. So let's keep that going, right, Bobby?
I have a question for CJ.
Yeah,
actually, right now, CJ, any fish you wish on the Michigan roster right now? Who are you going for? Are you going for the defensive tackles, or are you going for the corner?
I mean, Will Johnson to me feels like the best cornerback in the country. And that was a name that was mentioned to me to keep an eye on before Jim Harbaugh even took the Chargers job. So I know it's a long shot, but that's interesting. And if the dominoes were to fall correctly, I mean, it's something to watch. And then, I mean, you look at that defensive line and what it was able to do. It's hard not to look at someone like Mason Graham and say, yeah, he's probably the guy that would fit the Texas roster the best at the moment when we've sat here and talked about the holes and needs for experience at that position to step up in 2024. He's probably the guy that fits Texas the most from a necessity perspective. So I'd have to go with him as well.
See, I agree with those two because I think those guys may be superstars. The one that actually fits the roster the best maybe is Kenneth Grant, the nose, 336 pounds.
You need him.
Yeah. you see what I'm saying? I mean, I agree. I think Graham and Johnson are going to be first-team All-Americans next year.
Yeah.
To your point. Grant will be lucky to be first-team all-conference. Now, it doesn't mean he's not going to be drafted in the first or second round. It's just that's the kind of thinking I have right now. They've got so many good players on defense in particular.
Yeah, Harbaugh's been low.
Yeah, Rod knows exactly what it is. He's got guys that can run and have length.
Yep, he's been stacking classes. He's been stacking them. So that's why he knows that he's putting Sharon Moore in a really good position, that he should have some sustainability here. Now, if they can keep everything together, but you know, Moore's been there for 6 years, so he knows all the guys. The guys like and know him. So they're just trying to keep everything as, you know, as intact as possible. But yeah, man, they've stacked a lot of good players on that roster. And yeah, man, it's if they went there to play for Harbaugh and not to play for Michigan, then you'll see the mass exodus like you saw at Alabama.
Yeah. And the thing about that is I do think that Harbaugh tried to get them to go there to play for Michigan.
I believe that because the Michigan
man. Saban was, come through me to go to the NFL. Yep. Harbaugh wore that Michigan man mystique pretty hard.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed.
And so I think that leans a little bit into that too, Rod.
Yeah. Hey, Rod, remember, we always appreciated Sharon Moore because he was a triple threat in his post-game interviews. He could cry, praise God, and use an expletive all in the same 10-second conversation.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
What is this? What are y'all talking about? At the end of
was that Ohio State or Penn State? Which one was that? But yeah, he was crying and when he was filling in for Harbaugh. Yeah, it's only a 10-second, and in 10 seconds he did all three, so it was a pretty classic moment. Hey, Jeff Carey is a guy who listens to us and says, you know what? They said send in a super chat and let's do it. He already did one earlier tonight. Let's hope that Mrs. Carey's not looking at that credit card bill, Jeff. I want you getting in trouble. I want you coming back every week. And he usually does. So he's a good guy. Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate it. He's looking at the schedule. Says Georgia and Oklahoma back-to-back. What might be a game that could sneak up on us? Bobby Burton, you're the guru. You've been around a while. And you're also our Joe Mitzflick in the Little Abner comic strip. Sometimes the guy with the cloud over his head. That's
the guy.
You're the negative Nancy every once in a while. What's going to
mine is going to be a little bit different than most people's. It's not going to be Frank Harris in his 8th year at UTSA, but I would say one to keep an eye on and concern yourself with that maybe people aren't is Kentucky. They're a sneaky good team, like sneaky good running the ball. So they're going to run hard at you and then play action. Mark Stoops has a good defense. That's the one that most people are just saying, oh, that's a W, but not really knowing that Kentucky's become a good football team.
Yep, and you split them with A&M and Arkansas too. So it's a prime look over time, or what's it called? A look pass moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big game. Luckily, Texas has them at home, so that should help. But I'm right there with you, Bobby. That was going to be my pick as well. Sandwiching them between two teams that are going to have high emotional impacts for that game is not necessarily where you'd like to see them.
Right. Hey, another super chat came in. Thank you, Jerry Gibbons. I'm presuming you pronounce your first name Jerry. Thank you. Thanks for hopping on here. It says, what happens to Bo Davis if LSU's head coach, Brian Kelly, goes up to Michigan? What do we think about Bo's future?
I hope Bo signed his contract. Or I hope Bo likes some cold weather, because I know he doesn't, actually. That's one of the reasons he took the Texas job over the Lions.
Oh man, I know
You've
you
been up there, Rod B. You've been in Detroit. That place is cold.
Oh
Man.
yeah.
had to consider that, right? That had to be a consideration. He had to know that was a possibility. They've been talking about Brian.
Yeah.
They've been talking about that for a while. Brian Kelly to Michigan if Jim Harbaugh leaves. So I'm sure his agent would have at least brought that possibility up to him. And if he didn't, then that's a failure on his agent's part. It's like, hey, man, you know this dude could leave. And then if he leaves, we should put in something contractually where you get paid or you have an out or guaranteed, whatever it may be. So hopefully he took care of himself on the back end.
Ralph Neely. I don't know if it's the Oklahoma Sooner who played for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know if that Ralph Neely is still with us. But somebody named Ralph Neely who likes to come on the board says, Bobby, how many wide receiver transfers and the tight end are on campus? Now, you mentioned the Oregon State kid. It's not going to be here yet. So I presume that's what he doesn't want a full tally of all of our players, but I guess he wants to know who's here for the spring.
Yeah, of the 4 transfers, there are 3 transferred receivers: Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, and then the tight end is Amari Niblack. My understanding that 3 of the 4 are already on campus. Is that what you have too, CJ? Just to double check. Yeah, and so Bolden is graduating. He's going to be a grad transfer actually from Oregon State, so he needs to stay this semester to finish out his degree there.
Good.
Yeah. And Bond was actually on campus for the junior day, helping recruit, shaking hands, taking photos with the recruits on campus too. So good little tidbit right there.
Hey, wasn't that a wonderful moment when a lot of people brought those, little video clips, Twitter tweets, X's, whatever you want to call them these days, of Keelan Robinson at the end of the Alabama game when he's going out screaming at the recruits in the stands. I think you may have lost my feed, but here I'm back, hopefully. But yeah, he went around screaming at the crowd to the recruits, "Y'all come to Texas." And so,
and now it's coming true.
Right? Yeah. But we are people who believe in recency bias, and so now we haven't gotten a transfer in a couple of days, and so what the hell is wrong with Texas?
I want to say this: the one thing that's sweet about that for Keelan Robinson that not many people realized at the time, he transferred from Alabama to Texas. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the year that he did that, Nick Saban, he had a rash of injuries at running back. I don't know if y'all remember this. And Nick Saban made a comment like late game 7, 8, 9 in the season. Well, some of these guys just want to transfer at the first sign, and we could really have used them right now, and they could be playing for big stakes games, but they decided to transfer. That was a direct shot at Keelan Robinson, in my opinion. And I know that there are some people in the building that thought that was a direct shot at Keelan Robinson. And I think Keelan Robinson kind of thought that was. Now, this happened, 3 years ago now? But my point being, Keelan Robinson was the one in that end zone saying, all you guys come to Texas. Right. He made that. He wasn't one of those guys that still felt he was an Alabama Crimson Tide guy at heart by the end of his time at Texas. I'll put it that way.
That's a good point. I like that.
Hey, Matthew Hutchison, super producer. Syracuse Horns comment at 7:59. Thank you for putting this one in the pool. He says, do y'all think conference championship games will go the way of the dodo? I'm a guy who knows a little bit about network television. I've worked for Fox Sports, did TV for my career at the beginning of my life. I know that TV broadcasting companies like money. And so conference championship games are giant revenue generators. So I think they're going to stick around, but I'll let the smart guys in the panel comment. Bobby, what do you think about, SEC championships, Big Ten championships, Big 12s? What's going to happen there with the 12-team playoff in mind?
I think it's going to, I think they'll exist because they'll make everybody play one. They'll make the 4 big conferences play one, and then the smaller conferences will have to play one too to see who gets into the 12-team playoff, right?
Yep.
So it's just I think you can end up with playing 17 games now. That's a lot of football games for young guys. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know. My ultimate goal in college football is to have an AFC and an NFC. It can be the Big Ten versus the SEC. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't mean that the SEC doesn't expand and include a Florida State and a Clemson or somebody. You know what I mean? I don't know how it really looks, but I do like how the NFL has that set up. And maybe instead of there's 30 teams, there's 46 or 48, something like that, right? I don't know. It's probably makes too much sense for it to happen for another 20 years, in my opinion. That's how this stuff goes.
I'll say this. I think Bobby's right about it. They'll continue to play conference championship games. I don't know if the conference championship games outside of the power 3. Honestly, I don't think the Big 12. If you don't have a blue blood college football program in your conference, I don't know if you could be a power 5. I believe that's what the power status was built on. They didn't say that, but that's what they meant. That's why the group of 5, none of them had blue bloods. They were just a group of 5. Notre Dame was on its own because Notre Dame was a blue blood, didn't want to be with a conference. And the Big 12 doesn't have any blue bloods anymore. So I think that you lose a lot of your cachet, your credibility as a power player when that happens. Guys, if you're going to look at, I went back and I saw some research on Nielsen ratings for college football. Since 2016, you realize basically 18 college football programs and brands are responsible for 50% of the viewership of college football. Like 50% of it. And those brands are all in the Big Ten, the SEC, and talking about college football, there's like 3 of them in the ACC. Now with your Notre Dame affiliation, Florida State's one of them, Clemson's one of them. But as soon as, and by the way, those are all schools that are unhappy. They want out of the ACC. And that's going to happen, by the way. It will happen. We just don't know how it's going to look. And pretty soon, Bobby's right. It's just going to be 2 brands. It's going to be just like for your smartphone. You're going to either be an Apple person or an Android person. That's it. You got 2 damn choices. And for major college football, it's going to be 2 choices pretty soon. Apple, Android, SEC, Big Ten. That's it. That's it.
Let me ask y'all this. Do you think they should hire someone like Nick Saban to be the czar of college football?
Yes.
Him or the Wyoming coach that just retired too. I know he's very well respected in that regard. I know that he was a big voice in terms of conference realignment and bowl games continuing to matter as well. So if there's one of them, I mean, I'd like to see a panel of coaches kind of corroborate together to make the regulations and rules of what needs to happen for all of college football.
Yeah, Craig Bowl is who you're talking about, and he's now the head of the College Football Coaches Association.
Yeah,
he was
already there.
He just took that job not 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Grant Path was head of that for a long time.
Yes, he was.
Grant Path at Baylor.
Yep. And then look, I want someone that understands football. I don't want necessarily an administrator making that decision, right? Because I want someone that and Craig Bowl is really good, right? He was at Nebraska forever as an assistant before he went to, I think, Montana and then got the Wyoming job. That's a good coach, but he's not necessarily representing a big school. Mm-hmm. And so I want someone not that's been at Air Force or Baylor or Wake Forest to make that decision. Because otherwise you're just getting another smaller version of a lower division school and getting what they want as opposed to Rod's point, the 16, 18 teams, whatever it is, what they want. And they're the revenue drivers.
Yep.
So they need to be somebody that represents them is the one that needs to be in the driver's seat, not someone that represents the long tail out, down in the bottom 60 or whatever.
Speaking of Craig Bowl, I found it interesting. He's now head of the Coaches Association. Of course, as you said, he was at Nebraska for a long time. In his news conference before the Texas game this past year, he closed it by saying, "I don't like Texas." So we have a man in that role now who's admitted that he doesn't like Texas. So we'll see how that works out. So we have a couple of super chats, and we can kind of work at an hour right now. We can kind of wrap up talking about these last 2 because they are about conferences and championships and along those lines. And so we'll probably be able to suss out our conversation here. Mr. Talk Too Much was on there first. So let's go to his super chat. He wants to know if we should expand the rosters if you make the final 12. the travel rosters, they are smaller, aren't they? So maybe that's what he's talking about.
I think he's talking about the 85-man limit.
Yeah.
But
how would you do that once you made the final 12?
So, here's the problem with the 85-man limit, right? 2 years of them, full years of them, you can't really use the offensive linemen and some of the defensive linemen because they're not ready physically. And so really your number's down to 64, 65 that you're really thinking are part of your team, and the other ones are on the up. Now that if you want to expand the rosters, I get it, but I think that's going totally away, maybe too far away from what college football's been. I like the idea that there's some holes every so often.
Yeah.
I don't want every team to be perfect. It's not the NFL.
Right. I was starting to wonder with this kind of move towards the 12-team playoff, will you start seeing coaches use, kind of some load management like you see in the NBA? Early on, you have 4 non-conference games now. I don't know how long that will stay, obviously, in the SEC, but you do get an extra game in which theoretically you should win by a pretty large margin. So how long do you use your starters in that game? Do you dress them up at all? What's their usage like? I know it's not an easy thing to go out and say, hey, Rod, sorry, you're not going to play against, Middle Tennessee Tech or whatever. Yeah, sorry, this is a big game for your stats. I understand it, but you're going to be on the sideline with me because we're going to need you for Arkansas, A&M, and Oklahoma down the road. It's a tough conversation, but with what is expected to be 2 more games, potentially 3 more games if you're really good, it makes sense to have that conversation.
It's a great point.
I like what you said about load management. Yeah. The SEC has tried to do that they try to do it with the last game before their final big game of the year with UT Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Or, Coastal Carolina or not even Coastal Carolina anymore. But my point being with a lower tier team that's either 1AA or FCS, whatever they call it nowadays.
Right at week 11.
They've done load management in the SEC.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Speaking of the same concept, Lane Seawright has a super chat as well. Lane, thank you very much. Big hooking to you, buddy.
Yep.
Now he says, if you do go to 2 conferences, again, this is that concept of the super conference. And so a lot of people, when this has been bandied about by some of the national pundits and the like, it usually is centered around the SEC and the Big Ten, and you would have some other schools be kind of added to that, but they would probably be the prominent conferences that, as we know them now, that would be part of something like this. He wants to know, would there be divisions among them? Because there would be a large number, right? So Texas, OU, Arkansas, Aggies in a division. Anybody thought about what this could potentially look like?
This is my favorite part of this whole realignment conversation, because you get all big. You're like, all right, let's have 2 divisions or 2 conferences. All right, well, let's get a division going. And then we're just right back to where we were with the conferences beforehand, So it's a wheel in which you get really big. You kind of start slimming it down. You think, oh, wait, let's just divide everybody up geographically. And you're right back to where you were with the Pac-12, the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. You're sitting back there thinking, all right, well, that was the point of all of that. But I would like to see a pod at the very least. If you're going to be doing this, keep the regional traditions going, the rivalries, the pride that makes college football so awesome is that history and that hatred that is shared amongst a lot of schools. So if you're going to go into a 2-conference set, I would like to see at least a 3 or 4 team pod in which you share, a similar schedule every single year with those common foes. That would be my solution there. You can throw a dart on the board and basically pick out the next 3 opponents if you want, but keep some sort of regional rivalry intact for me. That's how college football got to be so passionate and special. Keep it in the game at some point.
Yeah, the rivalries are key.
Yeah,
you're right about that. That's how you want to build them around the rivalries. The consolidation that's going on, and I love the way you put it, CJ, there, but they basically just want all this under one umbrella. Because somebody out there, somebody smart behind the scenes is asking the question, and it's a really, I think, a good question. If the NFL is worth $20 billion as a league, what the hell is college football worth? Does anybody know what it's actually worth? The NFL is worth $20-something billion. What's what's college football worth? I think behind the scenes, that's what they're trying to figure out. That's why everything is being consolidated now under two umbrellas, because they're gonna figure it out pretty soon, and it's gonna worth a whole lot of money. And
$20 billion per year.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like 20
year.
exactly annually. We talk about annually here, right? That's what Roger Goodell's goal is for the NFL: 20 billion annually, and they're pretty damn close. I think they're like 17 billion or something like that, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But to your point about the rivalries, I totally agree. I think that's ultimately where they want to get to, is they would like to manufacture some rivals and also rekindle rivals like they're doing with Texas A&M, and those are your passion, right? Those are your passion plays. And right now the whole thing with all of the different pods you're talking about and all that kind of stuff is that some programs don't have these natural rivalries. They don't have, like, A&M's kind of like that. A&M without Texas, they didn't have a lot. Texas was their kind of natural rival. Remember when they don't have Texas as a natural rival, they were trying to force A&M to be a rival with LSU. And hey, what about Arkansas and here and there? Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is, everybody wants to outkick their coverage when it comes to their rival. Nobody wants to go dumpster diving when it comes to a rival. You don't want a rival. You want your rival to be in your league or out of your league. So, that's why LSU, they don't want the Aggies to be the rival. They're like, no, the Aggies are not in our league. That's not our rival. No, we're not going dumpster diving with the Aggies. No, Alabama's our rival. That's who our rival is. It's like, Alabama's like, hell no, we're better than that. So Texas was the same way with A&M, right? Texas like, nah, actually, Aggies, we don't really call them a rival. We dominate that rivalry so much. Oklahoma, now that's our rival. They're a blue blood. That's a great football program. That's our rival. So it's that psychology is also at play here with the fan bases. It's really interesting. I can't wait to see it play out. But inevitably, you're right. We'll end up with a lot of pods and kind of end up regionally back where we were when we started this whole damn thing.
You're so right. I mean, I never thought about it that way, but nobody wants to go dumpster diving for their rival.
No, if you're looking down, you're calling him little brother, That's how that goes. It's no longer a rivalry. You're just talking about little brother down the road.
Oh.
Hey, Bobby, you're so popular with the Aggies. And so let's bring up Douglas Mayfield's 8:13 p.m. comment, Matthew, if you don't mind doing that for us. Douglas Mayfield at 8:13. He's heard a rumor about the A&M not wanting to stick around too long in the SEC. So, see, and I read this somewhere too. I have no idea if there's any credence to it. So probably not. But Douglas Mayfield says, "Hey guys, heard the rumor start swirling yesterday that A&M is likely to jump to the Big Ten when they expand. What are your thoughts?" And he said he loves how Longhorn Nation's in their heads constantly. So
yes, I don't know what to say. So by the way, I'm 0-0 against A&M. I think Rod's 3-1. So
yep.
Are you 3-1, Rod?
3-1,
yeah. The only one that has real wins. My thought on that is that only somebody from A&M could come up with that. I mean, that's like saying, "Oh, LSU is going to go to the SEC or going to go to the Big Ten." I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, I know what it is. It's exactly what they said it was. Is that they want to go somewhere where Texas isn't, so they can make their own way, and be considered their own entity. Mm-hmm. All right, maybe so, but I just go. Yeah, just go. I mean, whatever.
They're not going anywhere.
Here's a reality: Texas did just. I mean, ultimately, now Texas is in the same conference. On having a berth in the college football playoff, looking poised to do well. It essentially forced you to fire your coach that you gave a fake national championship trophy to. I mean, the jokes write themselves.
All the Aggies want, guys, they want us to admit, and listen, I will do it because I'm not an Aggie hater like most people. I was almost an Aggie myself. Love me some R.C. Slocum. So I am not an Aggie hater. And Longhorn fans hate that I'm not an Aggie hater. They want us to admit, and I will admit it, that they were right about going to the SEC. And you were. You were right. You were right. You were right about going to the SEC. You know what? Texas should have probably did it earlier at the same time. You were right. You had the vision to go to the best football conference in the country, to help your branding, to help your recruiting, and to boost your overall prowess as a program. And yes, you were right. I'll admit that. You're right. Now, you do still have the problem of Texas coming in and the shadow of that big old, you know what I mean? That big brand and them horns. And that's what they're afraid of now, because that shadow, once that shadow comes, they know there's no escaping that shadow. It's immense. And that's why it's like, man, we'd rather run to another conference, which they did before, than be underneath that shadow. And I get it. I get the psychology. Longhorn fans, they mock your, you know what I mean, your psychosis and your I don't. I get it. I get why y'all are doing it, and I get y'all are right. So if y'all go, there you go. You can have it. Rod B told
agree with you, Rod.
Put on the message board. Rod baby said we was right.
I agree with you, Rod. They were right. They were right.
Yeah. There you go.
If they weren't right, we wouldn't have, done it 10 years later.
Yep.
No. Yeah. It's going to work out for us. And in fact, just the notion we were headed there has helped us recruit better the last few years.
Yes. So it helped them too. And they said that they were like, it's going to help our recruiting, and it helped their recruiting. And Longhorn fans, we can admit it, like, hey, you know what? That was a good idea. Y'all, that was a good one. You bet on yourself, and it paid off, Aggies. We liked your idea so much. We was like, that's a good idea. I think we might go the same way. And we ended up doing it better because I was made a bigger splash, and then it took over the headlines, and the Longhorns are doing it at a time where, and I will admit, the Aggies, once they did it, they had that big year with Johnny. And by the way, I did say they'd go to the SEC and win double-digit games. So, Aggies, I was with you when you did that too. But the Longhorns have hit it at the perfect time. College football playoff the year before, and then boom, returning quarterback, returning head coach, coordinators, and they have become the it program. Arch Manning now, the Manning chose them right when they go into the SEC. The Aggies had to go into the SEC to become a cool program. The Longhorns, they become an it program and now are headed to the SEC now to add to it. So it's just a different circumstance. That's
sure. And you'll see some reasonable Aggies even admit that whatever advantage they gained by that move has disappeared.
Yeah.
And so,
that's fair too.
It's like Charlie Brown walking down the street with his head hanging down after being humiliated by Lucy once again, something like that. And on that brilliant note, let's bring this conversation to a close. Bobby, I've seen the name Mason Graham a lot in the chat. I don't know if there's anything brewing with him. I'll let you get off the show and go make some calls and see if there's something to him, perhaps rumors about him popping in that portal. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be nice.
Well, here's the thing with Mason Graham. So he is actually not from the Midwest. He's from California.
Servite High, right?
Yeah, so he's from Anaheim, Servite, and so he doesn't necessarily have that in-state tie. Although, guy's been there 2 years and just helped a team win a national championship, right? I mean, there's got to be some loyalty there. That being said, they just lost and Michigan lost. One of the key players of the basketball portal this past year was the Michigan center that went to Kansas, right?
Yeah.
And he was a Michigan guy through and through. So
Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah. So there's some level of precedent there for guys to do that. I do think Mason Graham's a little bit different because he's at least from the state of California. He's an adopted Wolverine as opposed to one that was born and bred. So we'll see. And I look, first move is for him to go in the portal, or any of these guys to go in the portal. For us to say that it's for sure going to happen, or that Texas would be, all over it, well, of course they would. He's a first-team All-American at a position of need for the Longhorns.
Hey, Bobby, let's remind folks about your website you got going on there on TexasFootball.com.
Yeah, it's not just my website; it's our website. Please, seriously, we want you guys to come and join us if at all possible on TexasFootball.com. Free to sign up, post on the message boards. Read comments and from CJ. You posted 4 or 5 little tidbits today. I did as well. It's a way to keep up with the news flow during the day. If you're interested in Texas football, obviously we love to be on here on YouTube and on the podcast as well. But it's a way for you guys to find a home away from home on TexasFootball.com. Go to the community, go to the news section. We'll have more things coming in the coming weeks and days.
Hey, thanks, Bobby. I really appreciate it. And we have fun here on the Wednesday night show. You're always welcome. So I know you work a long day, So we don't have that expectation, but open invitation to you. But you're the
Hey.
boss, so you can do whatever the hell you want. So
Hey, Jim Harbaugh, thank you.
that'll be fun.
You just made college
Again.
football the next until or if they name Sharon Moore head coach. He just made another week of college football being
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Very,
about
very
There you
interesting.
go. Jim Harbaugh is, if nothing, he's interesting. So there you
Damn
go.
right.
Hey, thanks everyone. Again, we're very grateful for your participation. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe, ring that bell, do all those different things that folks do on YouTube channels. And again, thank you so much. We're all Longhorns here, Longhorn grads, all four of us. We love the university. We love football. We love covering football. And we know that you wouldn't be here if you didn't like it as well. So thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Bobby will be back in the morning. CJ, you're there as well for coffee and football. And so Rod will see you opining and always listen to you on the radio in Austin as well. So thanks everyone for joining us on this Wednesday night live stream. Again, I'm Ray Peters for CJ Vogel, Bobby Burton, and Rod Babers. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.